Hi, I'm Alisa Sparks, and today we are going to talk about home staging and the dangers of not using it because you're leaving money on the table.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 545. Most real estate investors underestimate what presentation does to their bottom line. Whether you're staging a model unit, preparing a flip for sale, or setting up a short-term rental, the way a property and a space looks and feels directly affects what it sells for, how fast it leases, and what guests are willing to pay. My guest today is Alisa Sparks, founder and CEO of Linden Creek, a luxury interior design and home staging franchise. In this conversation, we talk about how investors can use design and staging strategically, what actually moves buyers and tenants, and where most investors leave money on the table. Alisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me today, Brian.
Share a little bit with our audience about yourself, your background in this field, and why you kind of brought it to real estate investors.
Let me tell you, staging is something that I get very passionate about, not because of the conventional methods of like, oh, I love design. I do, don't get me wrong. But my corporate background, or my background before starting Linden Creek, was actually in corporate finance and military finance. So I am a numbers girl through and through. You give me an Excel spreadsheet and I can entertain myself for hours. That's my happy place. And that is one of the reasons that I love staging so much, is it's not just about creating a pretty space. It is really about optimizing ROIs on properties when you're about to sell. And so that's something that I get wildly excited about. And that's how I see staging, is not as decorating, but it is a marketing tool that is going to allow you to get top dollar for your property. And over the last 8 years of doing this, I have gotten the opportunity to see hundreds and hundreds of properties where we hear wild case studies and success stories of the impact that staging really has on the top dollar and the selling price of these homes.
You focus a lot with real estate investors who might flip a house or rehab and then try to sell it. Let's start at the basics here. Like, what do you typically walk into? Like, because I would imagine, like we were talking before the show, I think there's a lot of investors who are very good at staging or work with people who are very good at staging, but then there's some who just aren't. So let's talk about those people first. What do you notice when you walk into some of these properties that aren't selling?
One of the things we see when a home is sitting vacant and it's not selling, is the tension from the investor is they don't want to spend more money, right? They have optimized all of the pretty things and the spaces. They've thought about lighting and light fixtures and invested where they needed to. And so staging now feels like an expense to them. You know, why spend extra dollars to get a company to come in, put furniture in place only to take it back out? That could be added to your bottom line. And I think where the miss is oftentimes is when you add staging, it does the same thing as adding beautiful light fixtures. So when we think about building or flipping a house, we always say, you splurge on your light fixtures, right? Because that is the thing that the home buyer is going to see, and they're going to equate that to the value of the home. Are these high end? Are they dated fixtures? Or are they really beautiful and elegant and spacious? It's not the HVAC where you spend the money. It's the visual pieces, right? And staging runs in that same way. And so when a home buyer walks into a property and they see furniture, there's this really interesting change that happens in the psychology. So I'll share, there's a stat out there that says the average vacant home a buyer walks in and out of in 6 minutes. That's it. So when you think about that 6 minutes, it goes a little bit like, open the front door, cool, there's an office, check. There's a kitchen, I like the look of it, check. The bedroom makes sense, it's on the main floor, check. Then they leave, and it becomes a checklist. But when a home is staged, the average amount of time that a buyer spends in the home goes to 40 minutes. But the conversation in that home actually changes drastically. So they walk in the front door and they don't go office check. They go, look at that office. Like that's the space where I want to get some work done. But then at 7 p.m., I want to drink my whiskey and look out the window. And then, they move into the kitchen and they go, this is where I'm going to make spaghetti on a Thursday night while the kids are sitting at the kitchen island. And all of a sudden, their conversation changes around from a practical functional checklist to this emotional experience. And they're actually creating memories every room they go into and imagining what their life is going to be like. And they're mentally moving into the home. And that is why we see staging so effective, because what we do know is that buyers buy on emotion, right? And so when you're creating these emotional experiences in the property, it's increasing the likelihood of selling the home and selling it for more money.
What have you actually seen? Like if you take those stats and that psychological profile that you just shared, how have you seen that play out in your own business?
One of the things that's interesting is we always love to collect data. Hey, tell us what the experience was like. How did this turn out? And you go, yeah, I think the staging worked. It seems like the house sold quickly, right? But it's hard to give an A/B comparison. However, I was fortunate not too long ago to have a scenario where we were in a townhouse community. And so there were two identical floor plans. One of them sat vacant and the listing agent sold the vacant property. It took about 4 months for it to sell and it sold for like $600,000. The real estate agent called me and he goes, hey, I've got a townhouse. I need it to not sit that long. And ideally, we want to sell it for top dollar. I think we need to stage. Let's see what it can do. And so it was immediately after this property had sold. We came in, we staged this second townhouse unit. The home sold for $50,000 more than its adjacent property that sold at the month prior and sold within the first week. And that to me was one of my favorite case studies because it was this very true A/B comparison of like same exact property, same exact location, same exact floor plan. All of the things are the same. The only element that changed was the fact that one property was staged and one was not. And so it's a really cool, compelling understanding that like there is this quantifiable value in staging. I'll share another story. We had an agent or a real estate agent this past week. The home went under contract and he said, Alisa, keep the furniture in until after appraisal because I think the house is actually going to appraise for more while your furniture is in it than if you take the inventory out. And so it's interesting. We're finally starting to see some traction throughout these different markets where real estate agents and investors are starting to understand there is quantifiable value that increases in your property just because you've staged your home.
How often do you actually see that play out? Because you've worked with hundreds of investors, sellers, brokers, realtors. Like, does that hold across all the properties that you staged?
We do find that there is definitely viable growth in either property value or days on market or both when a home is staged. So we run the gamut in properties and we'll stage, a $300,000 house, we'll stage a $7 million house. And the conversation shifts and changes. So your $7 million property, for example, is not going to sell in 2 days, but it's going to have a lot less days on market, right? Where your $300,000 property or your quick flips, those are going to see more opportunities for selling above asking and then selling at a really quick rate.
What does it mean to actually stage a property? Are you just filling the place with furniture, or is there a method to doing it? And how do you approach it?
There is a method to the madness. So what we love to do when we stage a property, it's completely different than if we were going to design the home as though you were going to live in it. So what we think about are two things. First, the very first chance any buyer is going to interact with that property is through the internet and through an MLS photograph. So when we're walking through a property, we think, where is the photograph going to be taken? What angles and walls are they going to see? I want to make sure that those walls have the art, that really showcases the center of the room. And so it sometimes changes where you would position a sofa or a desk because you're purely doing it for the sake of the photograph. And then once we think about the photography piece, the second piece is we think about how the buyer is going to walk through the home. So when they open that door, we want to sort of guide their flow of traffic. We don't want to block walkways. We want to make sure the living room is open enough that there's a way for them to walk into the living room and walk out. We want to think about sight lines. So if a property has a beautiful golf course behind it, we want to make sure that our decor and designs are neutral enough that your eye goes right past all of it and right to that golf course, right? And so all of those sorts of elements we think about, and then we finally kind of finish the space by storytelling. So now that we've checked off photography, now that we've checked off the flow of traffic and how we handle the buyer walking through, how can we share stories throughout? Is that adding an accent chair and a cup of coffee in the primary bedroom to showcase, like, this is where you wake up, you have your coffee, you have your moment of quiet? Is it something more interesting in the breakfast room that kind of shares a true story? But that storytelling is the part that is going to generate the emotions we talked about earlier.
What is the difference between what you're doing when you're staging a property for sale and trying to build those stories and a designer who might be hired by the actual homeowner to furnish the home? How do you see the difference between what you do and what they would do?
It's very interesting. So the staging is really based on aesthetics. So it is, how do we market this property? How do we highlight the good things about the property and maybe make the not so good parts of the property less important, right? And so we do that in furniture placement. So a living room, for example, we may make it a really beautiful conversational space that's open. And then if you were going to live in that living room and design around that, we always want to think about function first. So then we're going to deep dive and get personal. How many kids do you have? Do any of them, are they little and they have sticky fingers? We got to think about performance fabrics. Do you watch TV in this room or do you entertain guests? So that will determine maybe if the sofa slouches or if the sofa sits up straight, right? We think through all these little elements. Do you need storage in your living room? We're going to add a storage cabinet, but in staging, we wouldn't, because that's just filling walls and we want to keep it open and let the home breathe. So there are lots of little decision-making approaches that are drastically different between staging and design, because one, staging is truly for marketing, whereas design is, let's function and create a functional space that works for your family and the way that you live, and then also happens to be beautiful as well.
When an investor or a seller tries to stage the property themselves and they don't have your background and your expertise, what are the common mistakes they make and how can they do better?
One of the common mistakes that we see is oftentimes an investor doesn't realize just how expensive it is to furnish a space. And so if you're not working with a partner that is doing this on the regular, you're going to be paying for moving costs. You're going to be handling furniture assembly and installation, which can be lengthy and time consuming. And then you have the furniture and now you need to do something with it afterwards. And so staging really is going to save you not just significant time in the design process, which allows you to then go think about your next investment property, build your book of business, et cetera. But it's also going to save you significant capital because the cost to stage a property is far less than if you're going to furnish it yourself.
Let's talk about costs. Why does it make financial sense to hire someone like you to stage a property? Where are the savings and what's the payoff?
A project depends on how big the scope and the size is, but I would say our average homes in furniture costs are anywhere from $15,000 to $60,000 of furniture are going into these properties. And so when you think about it from that perspective, if we have a staging fee of $4,000 to $10,000, you're already saving significant cash and capital because you're not having to purchase these items up front. But the other piece of it is just putting furniture in a home doesn't necessarily mean it was placed in the home in the right way to make sense, to really showcase the property in a way that's going to add that value. And so you need to really have that design aspect and acumen to be thinking about the photography perspective, to be thinking about the buyer's experience as they're walking the property. If you buy a sofa that's too small for the room, it actually works against you and is a negative in that property. And so making sure that your scale is correct, making sure that you're telling the correct story is important. The other thing that's really important is making sure that the quality of the pieces you're bringing into the home are consistent with the home. If you have a $1.7 million beautiful property and then you buy your sofa from Walmart and put it in there, the buyer is going to see a Walmart sofa and go, this isn't that high end of a property. And so making sure that there's consistency across the value of the property with the furniture is really, really important.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
What about people who just like maybe they lived in the house and they're selling it and they keep their furniture in there? I mean, are there things they can do to improve on the aesthetics?
There are things they can do to improve on aesthetics. There are a lot of staging companies out there, ourselves included, that will offer really honest advice and feedback. So we, spend time together in the home and suggest, hey, maybe if we shift this chair over here, it's going to open up that flow of traffic. Or a conversation of maybe there are a few too many items in this room. Let's store away, these books and this end table here to give more space to help it showcase really well. One of the things that I find interesting is California specifically is a different beast when it comes to staging than the rest of the country is. In California, if you have a property for sale, you stage it. You move out and you stage. That is like 85% of the properties. Everybody does it. Even if you have beautiful furniture, they know the power and the value of neutral staging, neutral furniture, and what that does for a prospective buyer. The rest of the country is a little further behind in that. So they say nationally, an average of 20% of all houses get staged. But I see that as a beautiful opportunity. So if you're one of the 20% that is actually staging and taking advantage of the neutral furniture and the impact that has on a buyer to really attract the most potential people, then you have a competitive advantage in your market, which is a beautiful thing.
I heard you say between $4,000 to $10,000 to stage a property. Does that include your costs? And then the rental of the furniture?
That is for our costs and the rental of the furniture. And of course, should a home sit longer than an initial rental period, you can always rent the inventory on a monthly basis, but that's not a requirement. And so at least nonetheless, you have your photographs for MLS that are ready to go and some really good traction on those first days. But you want to be the one that's in control of that first moment when somebody walks in the door. You don't want to leave that up to chance. You don't want to leave that up to their discretion and their thoughts. And it's interesting, even an empty home actually feels smaller. When you put furniture in, the home automatically feels bigger, which feels counterintuitive. I put something in and it got bigger, but it shows and showcases scale and size. And so we always say, if you're going to put your best foot forward, you need to do it on day one to really optimize on that.
Where are you getting your furniture from? I mean, do you have arrangements with stores and retail centers, or is there a special place you go to find staging furniture?
We have great relationships with a lot of interior design wholesalers. So we go direct to the furniture manufacturers. And because of the sheer volume of furniture that we own and that we buy, it gives us the opportunity to get our hands on some really beautiful pieces, some that may be available to the general public, but also some that are not. And so that gives you something really unique and special.
Alisa, what about timelines? Like, how much lead time do you need to be able to stage a property? And how long should you expect that furniture to be in the property?
I always openly say, as soon as you know that you have a project coming that you want help with staging on, definitely let your stager know. Oftentimes people can turn things around within less than a week. However, with that being said, there's seasonality to the real estate market, as we all know. And so making sure you're on their calendar for the opportunity when it's going to present itself, it's going to be really important. And then once you kind of line that up, the other cool thing is most stagers have a warehouse full of inventory, right? But they can be setting aside certain specific pieces for you and for your home and the design and the style of your home to be even more consistent. So the earlier you get them in, the more they can start planning and preparing for something that's really special for your property. And the furniture will sit in the home on average, depends on your real estate market and depends on price point, of course. We find days on market tends to be less than the industry, but what we recommend is you bring in furniture and you get your photographer in there the next day, and then you're going to have your listing. You're going to go through that process. The home goes under contract. Woohoo! But keep it in there for the appraisal. Keep it in there for any inspections, because the last thing you want is the inspection process, and the home buyers walk through an empty house and all of a sudden it doesn't have the same magic, right? Or all of a sudden they notice maybe a little scratch or scuff or imperfection that might be somewhere in the home still. And so keeping it throughout that entire due diligence process is really valuable. And then we can coordinate to remove the inventory before the home closes, and it's a done deal.
Speaking of photos, now with technology, you can stage photos virtually. So talk about that a little bit, because you might have someone listening to this who says, "Oh, I'm just going to stage it virtually because it's almost free to do it that way." What's your perspective on that?
And I will say virtual staging has improved year after year. I was looking at some virtually staged photos just the other day, and I was impressed. I was like, that is good virtual staging. So it has its time and place. It is going to help you with the photography side of things. So if somebody sees a photo of a virtually staged property, they might be more excited to come in and tour the property. Where the challenge hits is when they walk into the home is empty. So we go back to that scenario where now they're spending 6 minutes walking in it. Most buyers are looking at not just your home, but they're maybe looking at 10 houses that day or even 3 houses that day. So they don't remember what your home looked like when it was photographed with those visuals. The scale and the size oftentimes in virtual photography is not actually proportionate. So I know sometimes I'll look at photos and I'll be like, you could definitely fit a bench in that bedroom and a dresser and all these other things, and it's only showing a bed. And so you're missing the opportunity to really showcase the size and scale of your home and missing the window there. And then, of course, the biggest thing is you are missing the opportunity to build that emotional experience. And so that in-person physical staging, if you want to optimize ROI, is the way to go. And the other thing that I will say is staging covers a multitude of sins. We staged a property last year that had green carpeting and yellow walls. And I will tell you, the simple fact that that home sold within days over asking because we had really made it as neutral as possible with furniture and staging is nothing short of a miracle. And so I will say, when you're investing, you're not going to leave it with the green carpeting and the yellow walls, right? But there may be some unique nuances to your property that you just can't get away from. We've had scenarios before where agents have called and said, "Alisa, it's a gorgeous house, but my kitchen is too small. And I can't get anybody to buy the house because the kitchen is too small." And the house has sat on the market for 6 months. We came into the property and I said, "I think we should stage it." And she goes, "Staging it doesn't make the kitchen bigger." And I said, "You are correct. It does not make the kitchen bigger. But what it does is it's going to create this emotional experience. People are going to fall in love with the property and they're not going to be as offended by the smaller kitchen." And we staged the property and in 7 days it sold. And so one thing I will say is keep staging as your secret toolkit to kind of forgive the multitude of sins or the uniqueness of whatever challenge your property may have. Maybe it's not ideal neighbors that, have a messy yard next door and there's not a dang thing you can do about it. Maybe there's something unique about the floor plan that's less than ideal. But this is the way to really optimize that when your construction tools and resources can't save the day.
Let's go back to people trying to do it themselves. What are you usually finding offensive in those situations?
One of the biggest things that we see as mistakes, if you will, are size and scale of furniture, art, and accessories. So oftentimes people underestimate the size of furniture that needs to go in and how much furniture can fit. They underestimate the quality of furniture that needs to be in there, but then they start bringing in these accessories, vases for the coffee table, what have you. And you would be amazed to think if you saw how many random miscellaneous decorative objects we bring into every home to finish it and make it feel like home. It's insane. We will have anywhere from 30 to 200 totes full of accessories to just finalize a space. And so if you're not doing your accessories correct and your art to scale correctly, that may seem like the little thing that doesn't matter so much, but that's the little thing that tells the story. And that's the little thing that has that biggest ROI and impact in the staging itself.
Anything else you want to say about staging to our audience who real estate investors and rental property owners?
I would say the biggest thing is if you have not tried it yet, go ahead and find a real estate or find a home stager in your area that you know and can trust and give it a try. The number of stories that I could tell you could go on for days of the success that we have seen with it. And so I think for me, it's always continually a testament of if you're not staging, you're leaving money on the table. Full stop. In some capacity, whether it is carrying costs, whether it is minimizing your top dollar sale price, whatever it may be. But when the name of the game is real estate investing and optimizing ROI, if you're not using this as a tool in your toolbox, you're missing an opportunity that can give you some more quick cash for your next project.
Alisa, how would our listeners find out more about you, get a hold of you, and feel free to share whatever website information or other information you'd like to?
Check us out at our website at linden-creek.com. We have locations scattered throughout the East Coast and as far south today as Texas. So if we're in one of your regions, we would be happy to help and support you on your next project as well. And if nothing else, check us out for some beautiful inspiration photos as you continue your journey in real estate as well.
Is Linden Creek a franchise?
Linden Creek is a franchise. So we have 22 locations today across the country.
And are you a franchise owner, or are you the business owner and you franchise out your skills?
I am the business owner and franchise out the skills. So I'm the franchisor.
So if someone's interested in purchasing a franchise with you, they could reach out to you through the same contact info?
Same contact information. Check us out online. We're happy to have that conversation if there's not a location where you are today.
How are you using AI in your business today?
I would say the biggest place that we are using AI in our business today sits around our marketing. We have a beautiful marketing team that's incredibly talented, and I think they are 10xing the output of what they are capable of doing because they're learning how to automate and streamline. Now, one thing I would caution in that is I think oftentimes when we say AI is taking something and doing something, that doesn't mean you just go to ChatGPT and say, create this stuff for me. There's a lot of thoughtfulness and customization that has to happen on the front end to make sure that it's consistent with your branding, with your voice, with who you are, with the story and the images that you want to create and tell. That when you do that, something really beautiful happens. And so we love utilizing lots of various AI tools to optimize our marketing, allow us to be more efficient on a small scale team. And I say my marketing team now, it's like a bunch of managers that are managing AI agents to help make things happen.
Are you using a specific AI like ChatGPT or a off-the-shelf kind of AI?
We do use ChatGPT for a lot of fundamentals and GPTs, which is great. But there are some off-the-shelf ones as well. We love utilizing Opus for social media. So if you ever do long-form content of any sort, it'll clip it into short little form for you that you can share throughout the web. That's like having your own in-house editor, right? To highlight the stories and the clips that matter the most.
Alisa, thanks for coming on the show today and talking about staging and presentation. And you've really broken it down in a way that really, makes financial sense and is very logical, that if you stage and make it feel psychologically better to a potential buyer, it's going to have a big effect on your bottom line. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.